Thanks everyone for coming today to our Finding and Evaluating Open Resources session. And so how about should we awesome. Yay.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Olivia Baca, and I am on the Graduate Engagement and Faculty Engagement team here at University Libraries at UNM. And I'm going to do a portion in the early part of our hour today, but I'll hand it over to Jennifer for her introduction.
Hi everybody. So my name's Jennifer Jordan and I am the OER librarian at UNM. I also work with a couple of other colleges in New Mexico to make OER. We're working together on a grant to help save students money. And then I'll hand it over to Monica.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Monica Jamka. I'm the OER editor. I work closely with UNM Press. I'm a graduate of UNM, and I've got an extensive background in publishing and editing. So I'm really excited to be part of this particular project and helping faculty here at UNM create OER.
Excellent. So the next thing that we're going to do is ask folks to take a little poll. And I will give everybody a minute to think about this and answer. And if you're not in a place where you can answer, that's totally fine. We just kind of wanted to get a snapshot of our audience today.
It's also to think about, what we can search for when we're in different databases and repositories.
And so now that we've got a sense of what folks are interested in, Jennifer, could you describe some of that? I'm sorry, I wasn't able to see the results for some reason.
Sure. So it looks like we have someone who's interested in researching STEM,
Mm.
fashion and costume history, higher education compliance and accessibility, art and artist books, creative thinking, and then social sciences, anthropology, sociology, poli-sci, psychology, and then another person answered math and science.
Excellent. Okay, well, hopefully that gives everyone a sense of how wide-ranging this can be, which is wonderful. And so now we're going to jump into taking a look at OA materials in three different ways. So we're going to start with the library homepage, and I'm going to share a Firefox window, look at how to access materials from the University Library's homepage. We have a great limiter that's going to specify that we're looking at things specifically for community researchers, which is to say that folks who aren't affiliates at UNM. And so here we are at library.unm.edu, and we're going, I should say that if you start at this homepage, it's going to default to the catalog search. And what we're going to do today in our walkthrough is to select the databases button here on the left side of the screen, and it changes the middle panel then. And to really zero in on those open access resources, we're going to go to this type menu here on the right-hand side and go to community researchers. And so when we do that, the page will refresh for us. And we've got about 500 databases and resources listed on this page for UNM affiliates. So I think it's really, you know, um, I'm I'm happy to see that we have about 20% of that total resource list available to anyone who might want to use it. And so as we skim through this list, I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, the little icon with an open lock is what is going to tell browsers that this particular listing is going to be open access. So of course, in this list, everyone should have that little open lock. And then, if we think about all the different research interests that folks shared in that poll, I just want to point out that we are going to have, you can see here, biomed, economics, There's going to be great sources for statistics across fields. So somebody talked about higher ed, and we'll have availability for that, and definitely the social sciences. I can't say that I know off the top of my head whether or not we've got great resources for fashion, but that's definitely something that we can look at today. Um, Again, I think that the statistics and the numbers are going to be especially strong. For our second and third step throughs here, we'll be looking at ERIC, which is an education database that's provided by the federal government, and then taking a look at El Portal, which is a portal for resources paid for by the New Mexico State Library. But again, if we just stick with this listing of everything that you can access through the university library's database listing, I want to point out that we are seeing many different topics, right? So if you're interested in library science, we've got content available in that direction. Um, Excuse the endless scrolling, but I do want to highlight a little bit more content before we move on. So we saw statistics related to different things like transportation and infrastructure, but you can see here we've also got gender statistics. Um, there's going to be a lot of consumer health information that's available open access, so things like Medline Plus and PubMed. But again, if we go back to this idea of numbers, here you can see that we've got nutrition and population, Indigenous Digital Archive. Um, and so again, you don't have to be affiliated with the University of New Mexico at all to have access to any of these resources that we're looking at in this faceted list right now. And so if we take a look at something like Medline Plus, this tab on my web browser is going to remain static. And when I click on the title of the database, it's going to open up for us in a new tab. And so apologies if this is redundant for folks who might already have an introduction to Medline Plus, but if we run a search for something like diabetes, we're going to find information that, again, if we think about, when we were talking about sort of like what might we hope that folks who attend today come away with? And I think part of it is the sense of all the different resources and support mechanisms available to help instructors and other educators build OER resources. And so I think when we look at something like this, obviously, maybe no one in the poll is planning on a health sciences resource today. But certainly as consumers of health information, I think for you and your audiences, this can be a really great resource to keep in pocket. And I'll just wrap up with this comment with pointing out that on the left-hand side, we can see that we're getting lots of different types of information. And so everything from maybe specific kinds of entries describing what diabetes is or symptoms and so on, and then really getting granular into the different kinds of specialties that might touch upon. And then before we leave this page, I will just point out that we also get the different formats. So again, if you think about, student projects that might, or certainly for professionals as well, if you were building a slide deck, then thinking about the different kinds of multimedia that are available in these different open resources as well. So I'm just going to here we go again. So we'll take a closer look at ERIC specifically, but again, if we think about statistics, the National Center for Education Statistics is kind of a great starting point for lots of different questions. And you can see here from this description that we are getting things that range from early childhood all the way to undergraduate and graduate level education. Okay, so I'm going to stop scrolling endlessly there and again, just sort of hope that the takeaway for this piece is that anytime that you want to browse that collection, all you need to do is go to our library homepage, library.unm.edu, click on databases, and then from that type menu, select community researchers to browse that list of 100 different open access resources. So for Eric, we're going to go back to the library homepage. And click on databases. And there's more than one way to get here, but I'm just going to navigate to the letter E. And we do have two different instances of Eric here at UNM. We pay extra to have a ProQuest layer for UNM affiliates to give it a little bit of extra, horsepower, if you will. And so you can see here, hopefully on my screen, that we've got that entry for Eric with ProQuest. But again, we've got the less souped up version that's available to anyone that doesn't require credentials or any kind of login. And so if we click on that link, it's going to take us to the Eric page. And here, somebody talked about higher ed compliance. I'm going to wrap this in quotation marks to do phrase searching and see what kind of numbers we get. But hopefully this kind of example demonstrates that even though this isn't a resource that we pay a subscription to, the functionality and the way that you interact with this interface and the way that you use this resource is going to be very similar to the subscription databases that you likely are familiar with at your institutions, and that we tend to default to here at UNM as well. So in the middle panel, we get all of our results, which are hyperlinked. And if we wanted to take a closer look at any of those, we could click on the title to go to the item record. Typically, we're going to have full text. And so here you can see if I click on this direct link, it's going to take us out of Eric. So now we're on the item record hosted by the journal's publisher. And if we wanted to download or save the PDF article, then we could click on that lime green button here. But we can also just sort of browse, sometimes with reviewing literature, you don't know if you want to spend 30 to 90 minutes reviewing an article. And so then having this full item record where you can browse the abstract, take a look at the references or methodology and so on can be really great. And if we go back to the results page on Eric, I'm mindful of the time and I want to keep enough time for the other presenters, but I do just want to talk through a little bit more about, we did a very sort of high level search here, but we've got a lot of limiters and facets on the left-hand side. So if we wanted to drill down into ed policy or best practices, if you were really interested in online education specifically, maybe looking at distance education, depending on the circumstances, focusing on individual journals or individual authors can be really useful. And again, just noticing in the middle panel, we're either getting a link to that hosted item record by the publisher, or we have direct access to downloading PDFs from this particular page. Okay, so we've talked about looking at everything. We talked about education specifically. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on is utilizing these resources made available through the New Mexico State Library. So for educators who are working with students at charter schools or in other contexts where they may not have traditional library resources. This particular suite of digital subscriptions can be really important because, again, you don't have to be affiliated with any university or college in the state. This is available to everyone. And I'll pull up a live instance of this web page, but hopefully you can see from this particular snapshot that we are going to have resources all the way from like K-5 through middle school, high school, and college. And so I think I wanted to make sure to mention that today just because it really can have applicability across a wide variety of audiences. And so if we wanted to take a look at that, we can go back to the library homepage and funnily enough, we are already in the E, so I'm just going to go back to EL for El Portal, and it's going to take us to their landing page. So typically when I'm talking to students, I like to emphasize that there's going to be more than one way to access any given resource, and that'll be true in this case as well. The individual databases are also going to be listed in our collection by their individual titles. And so if you know that you want the middle school Gale database, for example, there's going to be more direct options. But for my memory purposes, I find it easiest to start at El Portal, and then from this page, you can navigate to a particular audience if that's your interest. And if we just take a quick look at what the rotating resources are being highlighted, you can see that we've got coverage here that is perhaps most familiar, like in a public library setting where we have things like automotive repair and, taking tests to get placed into like military service and so on. But we're also going to get more academic focused resources. The Gale and context databases are going to be the Gale databases are going to be the ones that primarily populate these focuses on students from K-12 to college. But it certainly will go beyond that. And if I just click on something to demonstrate, I want to reassure you all that, again, this is something that you have immediate access to, and it's not going to ask you to log in anywhere. We'll see if this cooperates. If it doesn't load in another few seconds, I might just ask you to take that on faith that it will eventually load. There we go. And so again, listening to some of the responses in the polls, we heard things about STEM and math and science. And so hopefully you can see here from this display that um, not every single journal, for example, is going to be available to you open access, of course, in the STEM fields, but we certainly will have coverage on things like bio and chemistry here that you could jump directly into, or environmental science. And then we also had someone, right, who was talking about the social sciences, and so thinking about things like political science, psychology, econ. And perhaps I will just close with a quick search. We can do fashion and see if we can find anything in this particular database for that interest. And so again, something to really be mindful of is the distribution of the resources that we're seeing. And so we have a big number here, but a lot of it's going to be in magazines. And so it may be the case that for fashion, that's going to be a better pathway. But if you were looking for things like peer-reviewed journals, right, then we just want to toggle to that particular limiter um, and keep narrowing down from there with things like date and so on. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now because I will take up the whole hour if I'm not careful and hand it over to Jennifer. I'll be here for the whole hour, so if you have any questions about what I've raced through, please throw those in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, so I'm gonna open up the other poll if it'll let me, of course, because now I'm screen sharing and I've lost the ability to do things. I am going to, okay, let's see if this poll works better. Oh, yes. Can you see it? All right. So we were wondering how familiar you are with open educational practices. And so definition of that would be practices that include the creation, use, and reuse of OER, educational practices. So yay, we have a newbie. And a few of you have done some research, and others have adopted OER materials for educational use. And no, we don't have any wizards. I was hoping we had a wizard. All right. Okay, and then one more person answered a noob. Sweet. I love noobs. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And then I'm going to move ahead to the next slide. So, here I have a QR code for you that will take you to the OER LibGuide that I have, and it has all of this stuff on there. And so these are some repositories also that you can check out to help you find open educational resources. Well, I'm not going to be able to go over all of these, but we have the open textbook library is really good. Merlot has been around for a while. There's the Pressbooks platform, and then also LibreTexts, and then Oasis is a really good platform as well. And then I'm going to navigate over to a bunch of windows that I have open. So the QR code that I had for you was to this LibGuide that I have. And I'm going to put this in the chat too, in addition to having it as the QR code. But this just has a bunch of information in it. For how to find resources, definitions of the different licenses, and then some of the resources that I'm including are under this tab right here, where to find OER materials. So in here, I have a lot more repositories listed. We also have a faculty guide that can be super helpful. We made this for our faculty that are creating OER through the grant that we have. But so it's basically like a starter kit for different terminologies that we use with OER pedagogy, and then also how to adopt, adapt, create things. So you can check that out too on your own to help you if you're looking for OER resources. But there's also these different repositories that you can check out if you want to find materials in your different disciplines. So this platform that the faculty OER guide is on is called Pressbooks. And the nice thing about Pressbooks, so we have a subscription to Pressbooks. It does cost money. They have about 8,000 open access books. And if you have a subscription to Pressbooks, you can copy any of the books that are in here with an open license and then copy it into a book shell that you can then adapt on your own. So that's one reason why we like having Pressbooks. But I could search for any topic here and see what comes up. And it's thinking. Politics, Power, and Purpose, Orientation to Political Science. None of these have pretty book covers. Here we go. This looks good. It has some nice front cover. And then So when you're looking at these Pressbooks, a lot of them are often formatted similarly. They have the license that you that tells you how you can use the material. So this one has an NC license, which means that you can't try to sell the book for profit. Um, down here at the bottom, there's more of the metadata, the description, the authors, the copyright. So if something's openly licensed, that doesn't mean that the copyright goes away. Like the person who created this intellectual property, they're still the copyright owner, but they're giving the audience the ability to, you could take these chapters and then adapt them for your own classroom use if you like. So that's one of the really cool things about OER. So that's Pressbooks. Um, they also have within Pressbooks some really cool technology called H5P, and it's interactive activities that students can use while they're inside of the book. All right. Another database or no, another repository that can be helpful when you're looking for materials is Merlot. And so this one has been around for, I think, over 20 years. And so these all are pretty similar. You know, you can search for a keyword. So we could do, I think I've searched this one, costume and history. Was that for Sarah's class? And so there wasn't that much. So it looks like we have the Cecil Bill B. DeMille, an American Culture book. And so here's the metadata page that tells you a little bit about the book. Tells you the language, when it was added to Merlot, the type of material, so it's a book. On this platform, you can rate things. Tells you the disciplines. So this specific website isn't exactly like the material isn't stored on here. So you have to actually, when you click on go to material, it might take you outside of the database. Or no, the referatory. These library words. I have to get the library words right. And so now this is from the University of California Press ebooks collection. So you can see we've gone outside of the repository. And so the thing about when you're looking for OER, you might end up on a page like this where, you know, you might ask yourself, what is this? Like, what is this book? And so compared to like, you know, Pressbooks where we have these pictures, like visually, this is just, there's lots of white space. Like it's kind of easier to go through. Just because visually this material like isn't as easy to go through, it doesn't mean that the content isn't as good. So when you're searching for OER on the web, you're just going to notice all the different ways that people can publish materials. And so if it doesn't look like maybe as pretty as you would personally like it to be, it doesn't mean that it's not good. You could also, since this is out openly licensed, you could take this content and, you know, convert it to a different medium and then, you know, format it to where it could maybe be easier to read and go through. So that's just some of the cool things about searching for OER. So this is the Merlot collection. The cool thing also about this kind of repertory is that you can also, it'll search other libraries for materials. And so it's going outside of Merlot to find this material. And so you can see, you know, what is this? And then you'll have to go outside of it again and see what you find. But it's taking us to a Google book. And so this is open, like the materials that Olivia was showing us and that we can openly access it on the web, but it may not be openly licensed. So you can use material like this to write your own OER, and you could use it in terms of fair use, like you could quote it and cite it, and it can give you information, but it's not the same as an OER where if it has an open license, you could take the material and then change it and adapt it for your students. So those are just some of the little differences between like open and like openly licensed and openly published. And then this is showing us stuff from the web. So, and this is also, you can get lost in these repertories too for days. And it's fun. And so this, it's taking us to this journal called Dress Historians. But I'm not 100% sure if this is openly licensed, so you're gonna have to dig to find that out. Um, you can look on the individual journals and figure out. And so it'll usually say on the actual journal if it's openly licensed. I have this Google Chrome extension that kind of opens it up in here in Adobe, but the URL is right here. If you're wondering what is this page that just opened up, I put an extension on there. So let's see. I don't see an open license on here yet. So it doesn't look like it is openly licensed, but it's openly published. So again, you could use this material to do research and to cite, but to use it, you would have to follow the rules of fair use, which will also be something that we focus on in a later workshop for this series. So I'm going to go and move on from Merlot. So we looked at Pressbooks, we looked at Merlot. LibreTexts is also really cool. Um, there's so much material on this repository, and I think they have the most material of any other repository. Not that it's a competition or anything, but it just is. Um, so this was created through an open textbook pilot grant. And they actually have people who go out and look for OER materials and put them onto this repository. So we can search here. Let me see. Let's search here. And let's see. You can see my previous searcher. So how about fashion and street? Let's see what comes up. 0 results. Uh-oh. How about costume industry? So you'll also notice different repositories have focuses that might be like stronger in specific disciplines. So like LibreTexts originally started with a strong focus in chemistry. So if we were to search for chemistry, we would find lots and lots of stuff. 46 results. Ooh. Let's go here. Okay, I had to get to the actual library. So LibreTexts also has, so they have campus bookshelves. So like a campus could pay to have their own bookshelf. So these are specific by different institutions, but this is also just like bookshelves in general of materials. So the materials here are CC, BY, the little strike through up the $ is non-commercial, and then this little Dilly Bopper means that you have to share alike, which means if you take this and adapt it, you have to share it using a similar license or the same license. And so the way that this one is set up is the chapters are under these little thumbnails. Like you would click on the thumbnail and then get to this chapter. So LibreTexts has copies of books from other platforms. So you could find the OpenStax book, chemistry book in here. And there's different reasons why you might want to access the material on LibreTexts versus on the actual OpenStax website, which I should show you that as well. And this is a collection of books out of Rice University. And they have a bunch of, so they started also with like a really strong focus on math and science. They have a lot of business. They have recently created more humanities textbooks. The cool thing about OpenStax is these books are all like really peer reviewed. They have a pretty extensive peer review process. And this writing guide is actually pretty cool. I was an English teacher, so that's why I feel okay saying this is a good book. But you can access it online. They do want us, to consider donating. Yeah, so you can check it out in the HTML format. You could assign this to your students and just like give them the URLs. You could also download a PDF of it. You can buy a print option. The PDF you could download, and if you have an Adobe license, you could also edit it and change it up and adapt it for your student population. The last one I wanted to talk about is the Open Textbook Library. And so this one is really cool. It's out of the University of Minnesota. You can also search for your different topics. A cool thing about this platform is that there's also a lot of the books have been reviewed. This one hasn't specifically been reviewed, but it comes in different formats. You can access it as an ebook, which would be like an EPUB format, a PDF, or you can access it online. Let me find one that has a review. So I'm just going to maybe. Okay. Yes. Woohoo! This one has 26 reviews. Let's check it out. So this actually has like a little evaluation system built into it. And you can read the reviews of the different books here. So in March, we're going to have an open textbook review workshop, and any of you can register for it and attend. And we're members of the Open Education Network. So that means that if you go to that workshop, you can then do a review of a book and you'll get a link to post it on the website. And then we're actually going to pay people $200 to do reviews. But the cool thing about this is it breaks it down. The reviews are broken down using criteria that are considered important for open educational resources. Also considered important just for textbooks in general, but some of them are specific to OER. So they rated the interface, cultural relevance, and things like that. Comprehensiveness, modularity. They rate the modularity of it because of the way that a lot of people teach with OER. It's helpful if a book, you can just take chunks of it and maybe insert it into different modules of your classes. So that's also what it's referring to here. Can you take it and give it to your students in like comprehensible chunks? Okay, oh, I was going to talk about searching on the web. Dang it, and I'm going to run out of time. But you can also search for OER on the web. I need to give Monica enough time to talk, but I'll show you really quick. So on Google, you can search, do advanced search. And you can type in costume, history, and then down here, usage rights, you can filter it by different licenses. So this is like a description pretty much of what the different licenses are. So free to use, share, or modify even commercially, that would be like CC BY. That's like the most open license. And so it's going to give us, Wikipedia is actually a really big OER. All of the material on there is openly licensed. Um, this is really cool. Wikibooks, there's actual Wikibooks on costume history, which I think I showed that one to Sarah. So, and then also on YouTube, you can do a Creative Commons search. It's not available on the front page. Um, but once you do a search, you have the ability to filter. So it won't show up on the first page, but here you can filter by Creative Commons. And so then everything that comes up will be openly licensed. You still want to double check and make sure. But so just another cool way to find material on the web. Criteria for evaluation. So as you're searching for these things on the web, like we saw with that one website that was linked out from Merlot, like it wasn't super pretty, but you could take the content and then use it in a different way and deliver it to your students in a different way. So, like the way that things appear on the web, like can be a little bit deceiving. It just may be that it was made a while ago, right? And so, like the platform might not be the most recent, but the content can still be really good. So, like this is the criteria that you can look at to figure out is it something that I want to use? And so this is the criteria from the open textbooks library. Okay. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Monica so that I stop hogging up all the time. Are you ready, Monica?
I am, yes, and I'll just briefly go over everything. So, just to touch on how peer review fits into this whole OER process. Why? Why would you want to have a peer review done on your OER content? Well, just as with any other kind of higher education project, getting that feedback from other experts in your field really adds value to the work. It helps keep content up to date. It helps create space for additional perspectives. And it adds a layer of academic rigor that just kind of further establishes your OER project as a trusted resource. Plus, it could potentially help you with tenure goals, and that's something that the OER team really wants to support and help you with if that's something that you're interested in. In short, peer review is a great idea. There's really no downside to it. But with that said, is it necessary? No. From our standpoint now, it's really not necessary. But it could be something for you to consider later on, especially when you're maybe ready for revisions or perhaps you're thinking about creating something else. So that's just something to keep in mind. To talk a little bit about how the UNM Press is involved in the peer review process. One of the great things about UNMP is that in partnership with CULS, we have a pretty extensive and established list of trusted peer reviewers at UNM and outside of UNM. And the UNM Press acquisitions editors are also really well connected to folks throughout the US, so can work with me and with you to help find great peer reviewers for your content. And there's a lot of support there, so that's really great. Ideally, we would want to have one person somehow connected to UNM and at least one person outside of UNM or wherever you're coming from, contributing to any of the peer-reviewed projects that you might be working on. And I would help facilitate that whole process. So I'm here to help however I can with finding peer reviewers, with helping establishing fees, pay schedules, deadlines, all of that kind of thing. Just happy to help whatever way I can to make this easy. So that's really just a quick overview of the peer review process as it relates to OER and just what to keep in mind as you find and evaluate your resources.
So I guess I wasn't running out of time, but we left lots of time for questions. But so Olivia, did you want to talk about this slide? Or did you have the conclusion?
I think I just wanted to leave folks with a sense of, we we tried to cram in a lot of detail today, and so I'll put my email address in the chat, but I'm happy to speak with anyone who's got questions about searching in the ways that I covered. But I think the vision for maybe the whole hour was just a hope that our audience will go away with a sense of there are different ways to really draw on existing resources to further their efforts. So that was my Hercules bicep imagery there.
All right. And then also we have this QR code that has resources. You can go there and find resources that we talked about during this session and resources that people have shared that John shared with all of you. Right. So it's 11. I don't want to keep y'all past the hour, but thank you so much everyone for coming and for all your questions. You can email any of us too. We are around if you have questions.